Did Ezra Miller's alleged real-life villainy ruin The Flash with critics?
I mean, there's people who don't think this movie should have been released.
Hello and welcome to Review Lab. I'm Emma Fyffe.
And I'm Fandom's own film critic, Eric Goldman.
So let's get right into it. We scoured through 20 reviews for The Flash from Metacritic's top outlets to see where each of them stood on the most discussed aspects of the film. And up first, Eric, is the Ezra Miller of it all. 9 out of 20 top critics said that Ezra Miller's alleged crimes took away from their enjoyment of the film. Were you able to separate art from artists this time around, Eric?
I don't know. So, and here's the thing. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, right? I am able to compartmentalize, but I'm able to do that a lot. Maybe it's growing up in LA and working retail and movie theater jobs and helping a lot of really beloved people who turned out to be really crappy people. That might have been a contributing factor. But I think I am pretty, again, I use the word good loosely, good at doing that, at like kind of keeping it separate. Are there little moments where I thought about it watching The Flash because of a certain line of dialogue or something that kind of like, they say yes, but for the most part, I was able to put that aside. Now, that being said, I get it. This is a very notable situation that is not years in the past.
No.
That doesn't, there's not a lot of closure on any of this yet, as far as what's going on. I don't know about you, Emma, but I really thought Ezra Miller would do like 2 or 3 of like big sit down interviews, not do huge press rounds, but maybe do like the Vanity Fair profile, a morning show or a 60 minutes. And that didn't happen. So I think there's a lot of people who are still like, well, what's the deal now about it all?
Yeah, it does feel like this needed a sort of Barbara Walters-esque sit down interview where, Ezra Miller addressed their behavior. They haven't done that. And so I understand, because for me, and I've not seen the film, I'm having a hard time with the separation. So I totally understand the critics who did take the stance of this was distracting for them. But did you enjoy their performance overall in the film? I mean, obviously they were already established as this character.
Right. And I liked their performance, and even in the theatrical version of Justice League, as bad as that movie was, thought, that the Flash was one of the highlights. And I will say, I think Ezra Miller's pretty great in this movie, playing 2 roles for most of its runtime. Really a strong performance, or I should say performances, is that, and that is not me saying, and that makes it okay, everything they did, and some really disturbing allegations. There's the surface stuff that's easy to laugh about, and then there's stuff that's actually very upsetting and creepy if true. But yeah, performance wise, it's a really good performance. Like, again, it's crazy. This movie took 9 years since they announced it to happen with Ezra Miller. Ezra Miller was attached to this movie in 2014. And we're finally getting it now. There's a reason they invested in Ezra Miller as a, hot young actor with a lot of indie cred and smaller movies, a lot of natural talent there. You do see that talent in this movie. Whether or not, you can separate it, though, is a big question. I totally get it when people, and there's people who don't think this movie should have been released. And I get that too, because it is a really strange situation.
Very, very strange. And especially, I think something that I've been seeing a lot of people saying is, why is this the movie? Why did this have to be the movie wherein we get Michael Keaton back as Batman? So on to the next big question. There are a lot of cameos and fan service in this film. Not going to spoil anything here because you've seen the trailers. You've seen a bunch of the cameos. So you've got Michael Keaton as Batman. You've got Ben Affleck as Bruce Wayne. You've got Michael Shannon as Zod and many, many more. 12 out of 20 critics thought the cameos and fan service were too much. So more critics thought that the cameos were distracting than thought Ezra Miller was distracting, though 6 of those critics made an exception for Michael Keaton's Batman, who, of course, is very beloved. Eric, how did those cameos work for you?
Pretty well. And I should, I think I kind of buried my own lead, pompous that is to say, I really, really like this movie. The cameos are interesting in that in retrospect, when I think back, I'm like, yeah, there's not a lot of impact to some of them story-wise. There's a moment where some of them are happening that it makes sense that you would see different characters, but could you have removed them and you wouldn't have impacted the story? That's true. But was I excited in the moment? Yes. Now, I know I'm like a specific person, like, I'm like a hardcore comic book reading geek from the time I was like 7 years old. And I'm gonna be the person who's most to use a wrestling vernacular to pop most, when you see stuff like that. Yes, you could remove a few of them and it wouldn't have hurt the story. I do think people that are kind of like, and we could talk a little bit more about this, the whole like superhero fatigue thing, which is both overblown but understandable when we're this far in. I think there are people that are like, all right, I get it. You're showing me people I've seen before, because now we've gotten a few of those movies and it doesn't feel as special because now we kind of know they can do that.
Right.
So I do understand that it's not as impactful in and of itself at this point.
Moving on to our final topic, a clip from the finale of the film went viral, but for the
Mhm,
wrong reasons, with some calling it the worst CGI since The Mummy 2. But
mhm.
that's just Twitter for you. 11 out of 20 actual top critics praised the visual effects, though 3 of those reviewers also called out the relatively shoddy looking finale. So, Eric, does The Flash look terrible or is it okay?
It's okay. Here's the thing. There's what I call the Flash Thompson test, which is that quick moment in No Way Home where the actor had to be put in digitally because of COVID and they couldn't get him there.
Right,
And
right.
people were really dunking on Twitter, like looking at he's not composited well, it's not enough people. And when you look at it like that, you're like, yeah, I agree. But when I was watching the movie, I didn't think about it. Like,
Yeah,
when I was
same.
watching the movie in the theater, I didn't think that. And so people taking clips and some of which are clips they've officially released but some are just like leaked screenshots, which I hate. I think there's a lot of out of context thing. Now that's not to say all the effects in this are perfect. Nope. um there's a big battle sequence in the final third where there's a couple times where it looks they don't like look quite like they're there. It didn't distract me because I was actually quite enjoying what was happening. Now there's another thing I have to dance around and it's really weird. There is a there's an effect used for some of the cameos. Uh, and it is a choice. It is 100% a choice. If you watch this movie, they created a visual style for how things will look in a certain way in a certain realm. It is established early in the movie. There's a Ron Livingston who's in this movie. His Barry's dad looks like that. This kind of waxy, fake. I put in air quotes effect that I think their idea was, hey, if we make everything look like this in this realm, we don't have to have the problem of we're trying to do photorealistic and you'll see that doesn't. The idea is this protects us. It didn't work. I mean,
It didn't work, yeah.
it clearly didn't work for the criticism. It didn't bug me because I kind of got like, oh, that's what they're doing. Okay, like they're supposed to look weird and off.
So we're going to wrap up by looking at the Metascores of all of the films in the DCEU as this version of the cinematic universe comes to a close. The Flash is clocking a 56, which puts it at 6th place out of the 13 theatrically released DCEU films, including the Snyder Cut. Eric, 6th. Is that where you'd put The Flash in your rankings?
I'd put it. I put it higher for sure.
Higher. Okay. All right.
Yeah, it's third or fourth for me because my top two are
Oh.
easily Birds of Prey and The Suicide Squad. Uh, Number three has
Oh.
been Wonder Woman, the first Wonder Woman. This one's neck and neck with it for me because as much as I dug Wonder Woman, the third act of that movie kind of lost me a bit.
Yes.
This one, I really enjoyed this movie, and a lot of it is tone and vibe. The opening, which is like the whole Barry working alongside Ben Affleck's Batman. I thought, oh, this is like capturing a really fun DC team up tone that none of the other DCEU movies I think successfully got. Because I didn't like any of the versions of the Justice League we got, prior to this. And in just a few minutes, I'm like, oh, we're just seeing two of them, but this is like a fun Justice League adventure. So there's things like that like maybe really endeared this movie to me. So I'm waffling whether I liked it more than Wonder Woman overall, but it's third or fourth for me, so a little higher than the Metacritic overall.
Interestingly enough, Wonder Woman 1984 scored higher than The Flash. And just based on buzz I've been hearing about it, that seems wrong.
I don't think many will say that. I mean, there's always going to be some extremes, but I don't think many are going to have that feeling. No.
Wonder Woman is currently sitting at number 1 with the top Metascore for the DCEU at large being a 76, which I'm in agreement with you, Eric. The third act lost me a little bit, but it did not take away from the overall enjoyment of the film. And again, it was the CGI that kind of lost me. You start fighting a big disembodied CGI monster, sometimes my brain just goes somewhere else.
Right.
Eric, would you recommend this film overall?
I mean, I really would. That's the thing. I get if you don't want to see it because of Ezra Miller. I get it, and I also get just like we talked about this, I think, on Across the Spider Verse, how it is unfortunate for this film that this huge multiverse story based on the comic book Flashpoint storyline that they announced like 6 years ago it was going to be Flashpoint. And then they took so long to make the movie that they got beaten to the punch by a million other multiverse movies, including one that is better, that is in theaters right now about Spider-Man. Um, in and of itself, this is a very entertaining film. And one thing we didn't mention is Supergirl, Sasha Calle. And I want to say,
Mm.
I really liked her. You could say she's underserved by the end. I've heard some rumors, and I think it's true, that the changes to the universe and how they had to change the ending of this movie is probably why it feels like, oh, that doesn't quite pay off with her. But she makes a really strong presence. Like there's just something about her, like she has the it factor, and really commands the screen. And I'd love to see more of her as this character. No idea if that'll happen because again, we don't know what their plans are with who's going to play who. But yeah, she's really cool. I will say that core, a trio, but really four people because there's two Barrys, of Barry and the Michael Keaton Batman and Supergirl. It works really well together. It's like
Nice.
it's a good little team dynamic they have in the movie for as long as that exists.
Well, now you know exactly what you're getting into with The Flash. Good team dynamic, mediocre CGI, and the question of whether or not you can ignore the Ezra Miller of it
Yes.
all will decide whether or not you want to go see The Flash in theaters. We will keep bringing you all the info you need to help you decide which films are worth your time and money right here on Review Lab.